originated that song and built up one of the premier dance record labels in the world, Salsa Records. The rest is history, because sal means salsa, soul means soul. And I connected it just like Latin soul. So I went up there and I gave the guy the idea and I said, I got something for you. And there was a young DJ at that time that was like God when it came to playing music. Anything he played, Diana Ross went to him, or Frankie Crocker, all the names, he busted your records. He heard my record and he went crazy. And I said, well, who the heck is this young kid? I said, he said, what do you want? I said, I want some money. He said, we don't give anybody any money for a record. I said, well, then I don't want to talk to you. And he said, but this kid likes your record. I said, look, I don't care who he is. Nobody's going to tell me about it. And I walked out. The kid ran at me down the stairs. Please, please, Mr. Tan, let me take the record. I want to play it in the clubs. I said, who are you? So he played. I don't know if you know your history, but if anybody that spins records knows of the Garage, very famous disco place. There was no sound like it in the United States. The sound literally came from the floor, that the pulse made you dance. You had to move as soon as you stepped on the floor. It was magnetic. And he played this record there for 1 week. And that's how I learned how to promote music. And the next thing I knew, we sold 20,000 records the first week, not played on the radio. It was played in the disco. This was unheard of. Nobody knew this technique. They didn't have record pools or anything like that. So I knew this before everybody. And he said, you got a hit here. And of course they wanted me. They made a deal with me. And I signed, and RCA took the record and it went around the world. The thing was that when they made me sign the contract, you always have to be one step ahead of these Mongols. I signed the contract, but what I put in a little clause in there said, this is only for domestic use. So in other words, anything that they did, they had to get my permission to play overseas. But he didn't read the fine print. So this is one time the artist got over the company. So of course, the record was a big hit. Around the world, they asked me to go to Holland. I went there. I never came back home. I stayed in Europe for 8 months. The record became top 10 all over the world. The only place we had difficulty was playing it in New York in the United States, because they hated rock music. There was a boycott against it, and of course, they didn't want mine. But then, lo and behold, the next month they're playing Sugar Hill Gang, and of course everybody knows the history. They went on to sell millions of records. But I actually had it first, but they wouldn't play mine. But nevertheless, I sold 3 million records around the world. It's still selling. I'm known as probably one of the first rap artists in Europe. But you want to hear something funny? Vibe magazine put out an article about the history of hip-hop. This Filipino was never mentioned.
It's Vibe.
But you see what I'm trying to say, and I'm not telling any lies. You know, and the credit belongs to the big boss. But what I'm trying to show you is what's happening. That's why we need you at Yoshi's on Saturday. You see, because this history is being kept quiet. Here is, now let me tell you, there's bigotry all over the world. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow. Everybody has some kind of prejudice. And there's no difference with hip-hop. Because there's no reason why you couldn't have gave Joe Bataan some credit. There are some Latino rappers that never been mentioned, right? And it's been kept out, excluded. Even if they knew, they wouldn't put it in, right? But now you got Eminem in there, or Miami, whatever his name is. You know, he's in there, selling all the records. But meanwhile, he wasn't probably born when I did the first rap record, and yet I'm never mentioned. So what I'm saying is, the same thing can happen with the legacy of Joe Bataan. They may never know that I'm part Filipino and that I touched some people's hearts, or that I was able to do this because we're sitting on our rights. We're sitting on something that we can do something about. And it's not just for me. It's for all the other artists that came before me. I mean, we can name a host of Filipino artists throughout history that came from San Francisco that I never heard of until maybe last week. And I'm an artist. So you can see the era in these ways, and the history, and what's needed. So it's time not to be quiet anymore, but to come out and voice, even if you don't like it. But I guarantee you, When you walk out of my performance, you'll be saying my name for the rest of your life.
I'm going to ask a quick question, if I may. A little bit earlier, Alan shared with you that very shortly, in a couple of months, we're going to be trying to inaugurate some workshops, music workshops for our youth in this neighborhood.
Okay.
And the Filipino community is blessed in that we have some very, very good music educators. Ron Quesada mentioned John Calloway. We have Ben Luis in the house, a fantastic music educator. What are some words of advice or encouragement that you might have for us that want to start something like this that you could give to the youth? Somebody that wants to get into music but doesn't know how to get started perhaps, or how to go about it. And you've worked a lot with youth, and you also have that experience.
You know, I think of my own situation, and I think about, you know, looking at yourself and a lot of other people. I know you had to have some kind of background to even have the gumption to start anything like the jazz organization that you're involved in. So first of all, you gotta love it. You know, don't mess with it if you're gonna go halfway. And of course that pertains to anything. You know, stay in school. You see, because if you don't stay in school, you won't be able to count your money. You won't be able to read your contracts. You won't know your history. You know, it's time not to be ignorant, because we don't have to be. Anybody that says that they can't go to school is lying. There's all kinds of opportunities to go to school, more than we ever had before. So if you might just be lazy, you just don't want to do it, or you don't have that motivation to get up there. And that's why everyone in this room is needed, because you need to encourage your offspring, and you need to encourage your culture and your art, because you see it's being hidden. That is the primary problem. So how can you have heroes if you don't speak about them? So you say, oh, well, I'm going to go to a wedding today, and oh, and after that, I'm going to church, and then you don't share it, right? You don't share it with grandpa, grandma, or your little daughter, or your boyfriend. You keep it to yourself, like I did. So if you know something that's valuable, it is your responsibility to spread it. Just like the gospel. You can't keep that to yourself. Because if you know the secret, you're just as guilty as everybody else that doesn't say anything about it. Of course, I've been guilty all my life, but I want to change that. And I want to be responsible for a cornerstone, at least that I say, when Joe Bataan left this world, he left something behind. You see, no longer that I want to live for myself. I'm nobody. You know, the big boss guides me now. And it's not me speaking, it's the Spirit. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to be loved just as much as everybody else in this room wants to be loved. And when I think about my father and how he wanted to go back home, I could understand now. I never understood that. And when you want to belong to something, it takes support from those people. And a friend of mine who's Filipino in New York, he said to me, Joe, when you go to the Philippines, he said, don't worry about your family. He said, everybody there from the mayor to the vice president is your family. And you will see that when you go back to the Philippines.
Okay, I think what we'd like to do is kind of like take a little break. We're trying to save Joe's voice for Saturday night. So he'll be around, and those of you that didn't get a chance to ask a question or maybe share some thoughts or experiences, certainly Joe will be available for that. We're going to be more or less in that corner over there with some of the things that we have, but also just hang out. This is our community center. This is the Bayanihan Center, which we're very, very proud to have Joe here. Ate Tess is in the house. That's the one that made the food.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. So you mean there's more lumpia left?
Oh yeah. So there is more food in case you didn't get a chance to eat earlier. Hey, this is like Joe said, this is your house too, okay? So make yourself at home. We're family, and we have the man in the house. One more time, show your love.